Hi, welcome to Celebrating Culture. We've always loved airplanes and the thrill of exploration. But did you know that New Orleans and Louisiana played a significant role in the development of the airplane, especially airplane racing? In fact, in 1910, they were racing airplanes in City Park around a racetrack, and a gentleman named John Moisant, who was the first to fly a passenger over the English Channel, came into New Orleans to race. Later, the next day, he crashed and died on his way to Kenner. In his honor, they named it the Moisant Stockyards. The airport in New Orleans was named Moisant for many years. We still have MSY, Moisant Stockyards, on our tickets when we fly out of New Orleans. In the 1930s, a team of Harry Williams and Jimmy Wedell started racing and winning all the races around the country. Airplane racing was a big thing, and today in Reno, it still is. And some of those people come to New Orleans periodically with vintage planes for us to see. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Celebrating Culture. We're coming to you today from New Orleans Lakefront Airport, and I'm with Ashley Franklin, who's the Special Projects Coordinator for the state of Louisiana, for tourism as well. And you're in Morgan City area, Acadiana. In New Orleans, we actually have the Wedell-Williams hangar, but the museum, tell us what's in the museum.
So the museum, I'm happy to say, has replicas of many of the monumental planes that made such a big imprint on the aviation industry. We have a replica of the 92 flown by Jim Hazlip and his wife May Hazlip. We also have Roscoe Turner's 121 Gilmore Lion, and we have a 22, one of Wedell-Williams' blue planes that actually went against what was known as the typical color scheme of the Wedell-Williams Air Service at the time. And of course, we have a replica of his Model 45 as well.
When you go to that museum, you really get a feel for what 1930s racing was.
Yes, you do. In fact, our video even has a bit of a flight stimulation effect to it, winds that come on at certain times, and it really kind of lets you experience the intensity of those air races and sometimes the danger of them as well. So come to our site, enjoy all of the artifacts that we have, including trophies from the 1930s races.
Now, Jimmy Wedell, his life is unbelievable what he did.
Yes, he was well known for a lot of things. In his early days, he was known for barnstorming, which was actual stunts on airplanes done in the air, and there was no CGI back then, so everything was done for real. He was also a very famous racer in his own right. He sold Harry Williams an airplane and also offered him pilot lessons. Harry Williams loved all things fast. He loved fast cars, so racing planes seemed to be the next thing in line for him. A couple years later, they started the Wedell-Williams Air Service, which became very prominent in the 1930s. In 1932, 3 Wedell-Williams racers took home first, second, and third place in the Bendix Air Races. Jimmy Wedell broke the 3-flag record. The 3-flag record was crossing 3 countries. That included Mexico, the United States, and Canada. In 1933, Jimmy Wedell actually broke the ground speed record at 305 miles per hour at the Chicago International Air Races.
Now, was there a husband-wife team going on?
There was. So that was Jim Hazlip and his wife May Hazlip. In fact, it was Jim Hazlip winning those 1932 Bendix races that secured a spot with his wife May Hazlip competing in the women's tournament.
Tell me how these races happened.
There were a variety of different ways to do it. Sometimes they were speed dashes, which were more of straight lines. Other times obstacles were put in place, pylons that they had to circle around. Roscoe Turner learned the hard way that if you cut any corners or didn't circle any pylons, you were disqualified. In fact, he was set to win first place at one race, but was disqualified after being named the winner of that race because he forgot to circle a pylon.
And so all these planes are flying, racing, going around like a racetrack, like we think today of cars, but they're doing it with airplanes.
Correct.
And then 1934, the airport opens here.
Correct, yes. That was the opening of the Shoshone Airport, as it was called at the time. Went hand in hand with the first Pan-American Air Races.
But Jimmy doesn't have much of a history after that.
Unfortunately, he doesn't. It was actually a routine training flight with one of his students that went horribly awry and resulted in his death in 1934.
Harry Williams doesn't live much longer.
In 1936, Harry Williams himself passed away. At the time of his death, Harry Williams had a no competition contract with the Army Air Corps developing a fighter plane for them. It was a descendant of his Model 45. It was called the XP-34. and when he passed away, those plans and contract died with him.
Now, I've heard also that those plans ended up in Japan.
I would say that's a little speculation at this point. That was said by a credible source, evidently a member of the XP-34 team, and that's something that I'm actually interested in and have been digging into a little bit myself recently.
It obviously is a very intriguing story to think that the Japanese Zero gets its origin in prints designed in Patterson, Louisiana.
It really is. I mean, that plane could outmaneuver any other planes.
That area we think about is Cypress. Tell me about that.
Yes, so Louisiana is well known for its lumber boom, which lasted from the 1880s to the late 1920s. And Patterson is home to not only the largest cypress sawmill industry at the time in the state of Louisiana, but at one point in the entire world. And Frank B. Williams was the one who managed that.
And there's a museum now where you can learn about this history.
Yes, the Cypress Sawmill Museum, which is part of the Wedell-Williams Aviation and Cypress Sawmill Museum in Patterson.
Now, is there a connection between the two?
There is, yes. So Frank B. Williams, the owner of the Cypress Sawmills, he went into the cypress industry in 1872. In 1929, his son, Harry Williams, went into the Wedell-Williams Air Service partnership with Jimmy Wedell.
This is Patterson, which is not too far from Morgan City and Berwick. They have a great festival every year.
Patterson, Berwick, and Morgan City come together every year to have their annual Shrimp and Petroleum Festival.
As I understand it, the Shrimp and Petroleum Festival is recognized as the most unique title for a festival in America.
Surely you wouldn't necessarily expect those two things to go together, but that partnership has existed since 1963.
So as I understand, Ashley, large jumbo shrimp get discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. A Sicilian family that's living in Tampa moves to Patterson to start shrimping. And the shrimp industry booms for Louisiana. We love our shrimp down here. And then we have the Shrimp Festival. So tell me about the area where the festival happens.
So the Long Island Bridge you might recognize from the 1969 movie Easy Rider. Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda were seen riding their motorcycles from Morgan City to Berwick Bay in that film. And that bridge is still operating today.
People love to go where movies were shot, and they say people were shot. Morganza actually last year had an event for the 50th anniversary of Easy Rider as well, where you could take pictures with some of the local actors that were in the movie. They had about 300 motorcycles show up, and they had a great display for Easy Rider. I mean, Easy Rider, it was filmed in New Orleans, it's filmed in Morgan City, it's filmed in Morganza. It is part of our culture, it seems.
Also, we have ties to the Tarzan film of 1918, which was the first screen adaptation of the Tarzan story.
A lot of people allow you to rent kayaks to go kayaking in the bayou.
Oh yes, absolutely. And there are a lot of wonderful bayous. Bayou Lafourche, Bayou Teche, also the beautiful Atchafalaya River goes right through the Patterson area.
And then Mr. Charlie.
Yes, Mr. Charlie. I've had the pleasure of going there. It's now a museum that you can actually visit. Mr. Charlie was the first offshore oil rig in the 1940s.
So Ashley, if people want to know more, is there a website they can go to?
Yes, they can go to the LouisianaStateMuseum.org, where they can learn about our two southern sites, the Wedell-Williams Aviation and Cypress Sawmill Museum, the E.D. White Historic Site, as well as our 7 other museums.
Ashley, I want to thank you for being on the show. I really encourage people to come out and see you guys.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show today.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Celebrating Culture. Celebrating Culture is brought to you by AWE News. AWE News also produces New Orleans Insider Tours, which are 10 self-guided tours of New Orleans and Louisiana. To download the apps, all you have to do is point your phone at the flow code in the camera mode, and you're ready to really experience Louisiana. Hi, welcome back to Celebrating Culture. We're here today in Pearland, Texas, and I'm with Nathan Harnagel, who's one of the most experienced vintage pilots in the country. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So tell us, what is it like and where's your passion come from to learn vintage flying?
From the time I was a teenage student pilot, I was interested in air racing. 2012, I got the opportunity to become a rookie in the T6 racing class at the Reno National Championship Air Races and got Rookie of the Year that year. I had the slowest airplane out there, but it was a challenge that they saw. I mean, when you're significantly slower than everybody else, when you take off and join up and then trying to get down on the course and finish the course and get off together, you've got to be pretty good at using geometry and understanding how to use your lower performance airplane to keep up with the faster guys. And I think that's what impressed them. At 400 miles an hour and 50 feet, you're a split second away from the ground and you're a split second away from the other airplanes. So everybody's got to do things in a predictable way. If you're close to another guy, you have to trust him that he's going to do the way you were trained to fly. Because if he doesn't, then it's very, very dangerous. Accidents can happen and have happened if people do unpredictable things. The races back in the old days, they had some that were very long, like hours long. We don't race like that anymore, so it's about an 8-mile course. There's a set of pylons out there. There's about 8 or 9 pylons plus the home pylon.
Do you have to worry about jet wash?
You definitely do. They teach you that during ground school and you practice it a little bit out on the race course. In fact, on Trophy Sunday last year when I was in the jet provost, the jet in front of me caught the jet wash of the guy in front of him. The safe thing to do if you think you're going to lose control, obviously, is to pitch up off the course. And that's what he did. But he was safe and he landed safely. Yeah, I think air racing began pretty much as soon as there were 2 airplanes in the air. There's races that go back to like 1909 when they would barely get up in the air and they'd race each other at 30 miles an hour. In the United States, they became huge in the 1920s and 1930s and actually became cutting-edge technology at that time. They were the fastest airplanes, even faster than the military planes. World War II intervened, the races stopped. They tried to restart them in 1946 and 47. Then there was another gap until 1964. And since 1964, every year, there's been races at Reno.
When you're flying your plane, do you reflect that 70 years ago, a serviceman was flying the same plane in a mission during World War II?
How can you not? I mean, you're flying along in a P-40 Warhawk and you look out this way and you look out this way and you see those wings out there. And you know, as a kid, you built models of them and you've seen all the pictures and watched the movies. How could you not think about the World War II guys?
It's really a refreshing experience to come here and see planes that we were flying back 70 years ago. Still moving around and flying just like they were, it's almost impossible. It's really a gratifying experience.
The P-51 Mustang, I think, is the dream airplane for most kids, and it was for me. I got to fly the P-51 Mustang with Lee Lauterbach, who's the highest time Mustang pilot in the world. What a thrill to have had the chance to do that. People do ask me about fear in racing, and I would say, well, yes. You have to realize when you're going that fast, that close to the ground and that close to other airplanes, that there is a potential for a disaster moments away. And you have to find a way to overcome that. I was in the military, I was in the Army. We did things like jump out of airplanes and use parachutes, and you have to overcome fear and those sorts of things. It's a very technical thing. I mean, you've got to be very precise on the controls, you've got to keep your wits about you, and you can't think about the fear. You've got to put that behind you. For me, I like races in the morning, because you get up, you go there, you check out the airplane, you go get the race done, you take the rest of the day off. I hate races in the afternoon because you have to sit around all morning and think about it. Aerobatics is when you take the airplane and you do maneuvers that aren't necessarily required to get from here to there. There's loops, there's rolls, there's air show maneuvers like Cuban 8s, there's Immelman turns, there's split S's. There's a variety of different things that you can do with an airplane. To me, it's pure joy. I really enjoy doing aerobatics, and I enjoy introducing other people to aerobatics. And I can do it in such a way that my 80-year-old mother flew through an aileron roll with me in this airplane and enjoyed it. Doesn't have to be a violent thing. You see in Top Gun where they're pulling all these G's, you know, and it's really stressful. I can do a lovely wing over that'll get you upside down, and you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to feel no G's, and it's not going to make you sick.
Nathan, I want to thank you for being on the show. If someone wants to learn more or wants to contact you.
Yeah, I've got a website that's associated with my airplane that's called Texan Flight. We give rides and instruction in my airplane, and South Texas Air Racing is linked to Texan Flight.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more of Celebrating Culture. We're here today at Lakefront Airport in New Orleans, Louisiana with the Texas Raiders, and they are part of the Commemorative Air Force flying a B-17 Flying Fortress that goes back 75 years. And I'm with Kevin Michael, who has got many titles here. Kevin, tell me what you do.
Okay, well, on the aircraft when we're flying, I'm a loadmaster, and I take care of everything that's on the aircraft, whether it's fuel, oil, cargo, or passengers. And passengers are by far the most fun. I'm also the wing historian, so it's my job to keep track of everything that relates to B-17s in general and Texas Raiders in particular.
So tell me, we are actually in the cockpit right now.
We are.
And this looks like original equipment.
Most of this is very original. Everything here, with the exception of just a few items, is exactly what they used to fly this aircraft in 1945 when it came off the production line. The exceptions, and the most obvious, is right here on the ceiling. We've got a Garmin radio and GPS stack. You kind of need to have stuff like that to fly in the modern world.
When you're here, you can take a flight. You can fly over New Orleans.
Absolutely, and that's always really fun. If you think New Orleans is a great city, you should see it from the air. We start with a safety brief. This is a B-17. This is not only a 1940s aircraft, but it's also a much different type of aircraft than what you would say, flying Southwest. We have open windows on this aircraft, which is much different than a pressurized cabin. The different photo opportunities that this gives you, but also the dangers of flying at 160 miles an hour with an open window. But some of the opportunities to stick your head out the top window, which I call the sunroof, you should not pass up. And I make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to do that. It's really fantastic.
So Kevin, when you're prepping the people, you guys use a little bit of humor.
We're a great fun group. We love what we do. And when people come out to take a flight on our aircraft, we understand the reason you're here is to have a great flight. And we're here to make sure that happens. But safety is our primary concern. We absolutely will not take this aircraft in the air if we even think there might be a problem. This plane has been flying since it was built in 1945. And there were just 2 brief periods where it did not fly during that time. And it has a unvarnished safety record during that time.
You can fly in the front. You can fly as the bombardier spot.
You can. If you get sat up there, we have the bombardier and the navigator. Really an opportunity, should never be passed up. The view is unbelievable. An aircraft like this has a clear nose, which you've ever seen a B-17. One of the things that you notice very first is that clear nose. Well, that's how they used to aim bombs, was visually. And we have the Norden bomb sight in there that they used to do that. Today, bombers don't aim visually, so we don't need that. But the view that gives you as a passenger is unsurpassed. You got a better view there than the pilots do.
And you actually have bombs in here. When people are flying it, it is equipped as if it was going on a mission.
We've done a painstaking job of restoring the aircraft to look very much like an 8th Air Force bomber that went into combat in 1944 and 1945, and that's on purpose. The 3-part mission of the Commemorative Air Force is to honor, inspire, and educate. We're honoring our veterans that gave us the freedoms that we take for granted every day. We're inspiring the next generation. And most importantly, we're educating everyone as to where all these freedoms came from.
How many B-17s are still flying?
There were 12,731 built. There were 5,000 lost in combat. Today, there are just 5 in the world that are still flying. 4 of them are here in the U.S., and 1 is in the United Kingdom.
And I'm with John Bixby, who's one of the pilots. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So John, the B-17, during World War II, I mean, that was the bombing plane.
It was. This one seems like it had most of the glory and was the most popular. I mean, that's not to say it was the most effective. They built 12,700 of them. Hundreds, thousands of these things flying over both the European theater and the Pacific theater during the war.
When we think about the raids over Germany, this is the plane.
This is. When they would do the 1,000-plane raids that you've heard about, they would take off from air bases all over Europe.
Their job was to shut down German manufacturing.
Absolutely. They were bombing oil refineries, ball bearing plants, aircraft factories, tank factories, you name it. We had a 10-man crew. We had the top turret with 2 machine guns. We had the chin turret with 2 machine guns. We had 2 cheek guns on either side in the nose, plus these 2 waist guns, the 2 guns down below in the ball turret, plus the 2 guns back in the tail, hence the term Flying Fortress.
What is it like when those men show up? I mean, we enjoy it. I mean, taking a ride in this thing is really nostalgic. But when you see a gentleman show up that was actually in it.
Well, that's becoming rarer and rarer. Yesterday we had a 101-year-old former C-47 crew chief that came through. And he was just an absolute delight to have through here.
And I'm with Hubert Terrell, who was actually a World War II veteran from D-Day. Hubert, welcome to the show, and my honor to have you as a guest. So,
Thank you. I parachuted into occupied France at night from England 5 times before D-Day, picking up information that our commanders wanted. And then D-Day, I was chief engineer on a troop carrier, C-47. We dropped paratroopers at 12 o'clock on Sunday night before D-Day.
what did you feel as you got ready, knowing that this was the beginning of D-Day?
You don't know what's going to happen. The bombers had been going over, getting shot up, shot down before D-Day out of England. It was a journey that I surely wouldn't want to take over, go again.
Sure. You and your brothers are such heroes to America.
And we meet a lot of veterans where we hear 3 months, 4 months later that they've passed. That's a tearjerker for us. The way I've learned to think about that is we got to them in time. We got to honor them. We got to bring them on our aircraft, and we got to meet them and thank them in person. We had a veteran come out about 3 years ago, and he came out in his wheelchair, and he, with that wordless, he didn't introduce himself, didn't do anything. He rolled out to the airplane, and he got out of his chair. You could tell he needed a wheelchair, and it was really difficult for him to stand up, but he stood out of his wheelchair. I'm tearing up now. Got to the plane, he literally kissed it. So it turns out that this guy had flown 17 combat missions over Europe, the 8th Air Force. On his 18th mission, he was shot down. But he got all the combat damage over Germany. He had 3 engines out. B-17 on 1 engine got him over friendly territory, and he was able to control land. There's very few aircraft that will give you a controlled landing on 3/4 of your engines out, and B-17 can do that. So the B-17, in his view, saved his life.
How big is the Commemorative Air Force?
We are about 10,000 members nationwide, actually worldwide. We've got 2 wings that are in the international space now. We have 171 aircraft. Here in New Orleans, we've got a Stearman, and you can come out and see that today and basically any time. The wing is based right here at Lakefront Airport.
You guys recently were in Opelousas, Louisiana, which is a small town, but it seemed like the crowd was really there.
So when we have people in Opelousas or any other city come out and see the plane, we make sure that they get a great experience. It's very important to us. I mean, we're all volunteers here. None of us get paid to do what we do, and that's from the guy that just joined, is basically just the go-getter, right up to our wing leader. None of us get paid $1, but we're all here as a labor of love.
You guys raise a lot of money.
So we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means that all the money that we take in goes to keeping this aircraft airborne, and it takes a surprising amount of money to do that.
As far as knowledge,
my mission of the last 3 years is to create a basis of correct knowledge, because there are so many myths out there about the B-17 and World War II in general.
Now, you dispelled for me today a myth about the whole 9 yards.
I did, yes, and that's one of the most pervasive myths out there about World War II, and that is the whole 9 yards, and most people have heard about it. That myth has nothing to do with World War II. It certainly has nothing to do with a P-51 or a B-17, and there's many reasons for that. A M2 air-cooled machine gun could never fire a 9-yard belt of ammunition without self-destructing. The barrel would melt, it would droop down, and you'd be gone. And even if you could, why would you fire all of your ammunition at one fighter? What's going to protect you against the next one that comes around?
So it's definitely an urban legend.
Definitely an urban legend.
If someone wants to know more about all the history and know more about the wing, what's your website?
Okay, our website is b17texasraiders.org, and if you want to join the wing, which you can do, I actually live in Colorado. I don't live anywhere near Houston, so you don't need to live in Houston to be a member.
Kevin, I want to thank you for being on the show, and stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Celebrating Culture. Hi, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Celebrating Culture. On News has interviewed hundreds of people and produced dozens of episodes for local broadcasting of awesome people doing great things to inspire us all. If you'd like to watch a specific interview, please visit our YouTube channel and subscribe. We're coming to you today from New Orleans Lakefront Airport. The Lakefront Airport is very special because you can see it's an Art Deco terminal, and it's very close to where a gentleman named Francesco Di Pinedo landed his plane in New Orleans in 1927. And I'm with Vincenzo Acquabelli. Vincenzo is the representative of the Consul General of Italians living abroad. He's also an aviator and a history enthusiast. Vincenzo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. The significance of the mission of the Pinedo mission was the fact that it was the first foreign seaplane to come to the United States.
He leaves in 1927 from Rome, goes to Africa, and crosses the Atlantic 2 months before Lindbergh to Brazil. And there's a beautiful painting here by Xavier Gonzalez of him in Brazil with his seaplane. And he comes up the Amazon into the Caribbean, and from the Caribbean lands in New Orleans 2 months before Lindbergh.
And with this plane called Santa Maria. Why Santa Maria? To honor another greatest Italian, which was Christopher Columbus. Eventually, he was named as the messenger of the Italian, messaggero dell'italianità, considered like an ambassador.
Yes. National Geographic in 1928 did a great story about him, and he compares himself to Marco Polo because he covers 60,000 miles and covers 6 continents. So he comes into America, he ends up back in Rome, and then he goes to Asia and Australia and back to Rome. So he was the Marco Polo of his era.
When he left, he returned to Rome after 130 days. He was basically welcomed by thousands and thousands of Italians. He was decorated by the United Kingdom as the Lord of the Distance. They decide in Italy, the government at the time, they decide, well, they were trying to give a desk job to him. Of course, you cannot do this to a true aviator. A true aviator, they don't want to be in a desk in an office. So he was disappointed. His new goal was eventually to fly from New York to Baghdad, non-stop. Unfortunately, they filled up more gas, more fuel in his airplane. It didn't go well. Unfortunately, he died in July of 1933. This was a sad story for a great aviator and pioneer.
Vincenzo, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for coming to New Orleans to tell us this great aviation history of New Orleans and Italian aviation. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more Celebrating Culture. Hi, welcome back to Celebrating Culture. We hope you've enjoyed this episode on New Orleans and Louisiana's contribution to aviation. New Orleans and Louisiana continue to be very active in the next frontier, from aviation to outer space. Today, around the Gulf Coast region, there are many places to see a museum or participate in what's going on with our outer space exploration.